coming up onto the panel as well. So yes, so we've got a panel with Joe, Delia, Lloyd, Jason, and are you still on the line, Katie?
I am.
You are, great. So you're the disembodied voice.
Yeah. You probably don't need me on a big screen. But I don't know. I'll put my camera on in case it helps.
So we've heard from most of the people on the panel already today, so we know why they're there in terms of body carbon. Jason's on the panel as well. We wanted him there because he's done a lot of carbon modelling, and you will have seen the presentations he's given on carbon modelling tools. And then, so we want his view on this. And then, you all right with the mics and things?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
so
is it working?
It's working, I think.
It's working. Okay. How close do I have to hold it before it stops looking? There. Okay. Thanks, Arthur.
Oh, sorry, I've put you on screen, Katie.
It's fine. As long as it's not too weird for people in the room, I'm sorry.
And I put the...
Yes, we've had everybody else speak today, apart from Jason, but I don't think he needs too much introduction. If you don't know who he is, where have you been? But he's mostly here because of Sustainable Engineering's release of the Carbonator last month. Not with his embodied, well, with the whole of life carbon lens on. So we haven't got very much time, so we've just got a few short and sweet questions that we'll go through, and you don't feel like you have to answer them all, but we will try and get you, Katie, on to answer a few of them. So as you mentioned, Lloyd, there's a lot of people and a lot of designers who still don't really understand what embodied carbon is and what their responsibility is around that. So what's some of the low-hanging fruits? What are some of the easy implement now decisions that a designer could do? And who wants to go for that? Delia?
I suppose think about where materials come from, you know, like literally just short and simple. It doesn't need to be complicated. Like the more sophisticated something is, the more manufactured it is, the more carbon it's got, you know. So just think about a simple thing. If it's coming from somewhere local and it's not highly processed, it's going to be better. And if it's natural, all the better too, you know.
Well, I was talking about sufficiency. It's all about design. That's what we do. We have to design more. We need to basically use less stuff. Better designs that are more efficient, that are simpler, just automatically cuts down the amount of material you're using and the amount of energy is required to keep it going. So I'll always come back to that.
I think being not in the position to be able to do design very much, being a consultant, I would say try to stick away from metal claddings would be probably my first step. And think about how you can do those where you often make small decisions on claddings and interior linings and floor finishes that don't really change the building very much, but can significantly impact the embodied carbon or upfront carbon, I guess.
I'm just going to say that you know, what's the saying? Don't let perfection get in the way of progress, right? We're not going to all of a sudden transition every building to mass timber or, you know, fully natural materials. So it's we need everyone to kind of come on the journey. Right? We need lower carbon steel, lower carbon concrete, because that's not just going to change overnight, right? So we need everyone to kind of to play their part.
Cool, awesome. Katie, did you have anything to?
Yeah, I mean, echoing what Lloyd said, as a structural engineer by background, you know, when you have to start jumping through hoops and putting transfer beams and just making that the structure elements of a building, which we know account for a large proportion of the upfront and whole of life embodied carbon, then you're kind of, you know, you're losing straight away. So yeah, keeping things simple, like simple load paths for a building, like really helps. Regular floor plates, yeah, things like that really help. But also use less stuff. Maybe you don't even need to build the building. Like, you know, challenging the brief is something that that I think we should be getting used to doing as well, where we have the opportunity, because the most sustainable building is the one you don't build.
Quite right. And maybe we need to work on our average square meter house in New Zealand, get it down from number 2 or number 3 as well. So, Lloyd, do you want to?
Yeah, I think, I mean, echoing what Lloyd said, as a structural engineer by background, you know, when you have to start jumping through hoops and putting transfer beams and just making that the structure elements of a building, which we know account for a large proportion of the upfront and whole of life embodied carbon, then you're kind of, you know, you're losing straight away. So yeah, keeping things simple, like simple load paths for a building, like, you know, challenging the brief is something that
you had some good examples, Lloyd, of some of the really big emitters of carbon in buildings that we don't necessarily think about, like carpet. Are there any other really surprising examples that you've come across in your research or in your experience that we might want to know about to think about at the start of the design process? What are the things that maybe we need to avoid?
Well, you actually hit on it in Philip Oldfield's short recent study that I just referenced, where he was looking at an office building, that he actually found that the change of carpet to hardwood was the single biggest factor in reducing the upfront carbon in the building design. And I was shocked that that change would have been so significant.
Does that include pure wool carpet? Does it backing, or are you just talking about nylon?
I can't answer that. I don't know the details there.
I think it's the backing as well, and the underlay, and also the fact that carpet is actually changed quite frequently in a building's lifetime, which does add a lot to embodied carbon, obviously.
I was just going to say, I think it is still very important to measure. I'm worried I'm going to end up on a Elrond tweet, but so because contrary to that slide that Lloyd had about the pencil, the production being really small and the transportation being very large, that's not the case for most building materials, right? So your big heavy building materials tend to a lot of it's really the manufacturing and extraction that drives those emissions, right? So the transportation ends up being really small. So that's why it's not always the case of local. I mean, there's obviously other reasons for buying local, but from a carbon perspective, local is not always better.
Can I just contradict one thing in that they're like the whole A5 category of work that's done, the trucks on site and everything like that. Recent studies have found that it's grossly underestimated, that people are really ignoring the fact you build a house and 15 pickup trucks are coming up to the house, and that people just aren't properly counting them, and none of the software properly counts it. And some builders have been doing their own analysis and saying that A5 category is 30% of their upfront carbon emissions, when most people assume it's about 3 to 5%. So we've got to look at these numbers carefully.
One thing I learned on the low co-house project was how much, and from Becca's consultant actually, was how much the site carbon was associated with the site around the house. So the driveway, the widening of the road in front, the sidewalks, all that stuff. So one of the things you should consider in design, and something I often don't think of, is where the house is located or where the place is located and what kind of other hard surfaces and structure you're building around it. Because there's a heap of carbon and concrete that goes into site works that aren't necessarily supporting the building.
Can I also just add, I think Jason's a braver man than me than to call out, avoid metal cladding. I think there is something about, what's exciting about the construction industry is that every building is different, and every, building will have its optimum design in terms of carbon. So I think, I'm wary of getting into what's the best system or material, and just thinking to try and lift the conversation up a bit higher. And concrete, yeah, it's got a high footprint, but it's going to be around for a very long time. We should be encouraging every material to be as low carbon as it can be, and every designer to understand where is the most appropriate place for them to use it to achieve the optimum, i.e. minimum embodied carbon.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, because it is about choice of material and using it in the right place. So, we would have a concrete ring beam for a straw bale foundation to make sure that we can maintain that building for as long as possible. People often say the durability of the material, we want a metal clad building or a concrete clad building because it lasts forever. But actually, if you maintain your building materials and you design them and detail them correctly, then durability should not be an issue. And we always have to maintain buildings, they're living systems, existing in nature. So use the right material in the right place to allow those materials to be able to be used and looked after, and that can deal with your carbon as well.
Nobody wants to maintain their buildings anymore, do they? That's part of the trouble when you need to. Yeah. So what can you give us an example of a technology of a material or a system that you'd really like to see progressed and accelerated in New Zealand to help us all meet our climate obligations?
I've got to say straw panels or hempcrete, don't I? Because they're kind of pretty obvious answers. I mean, I've shown you a bit about the performance and the carbon sequestering with those, and it's material that we have here in this country now, you know, and it's grown regionally, and it could be manufactured regionally, and it could be building buildings regionally, you know, and the high performance and the insulation and all of those things are all there, tick, 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 you know. So yes, we should be supporting that kind of innovation, you know, and it's happening overseas too. So.
I spent some time talking to Stefan, the straw panel builder out there yesterday, and I've come away, I'd seen straw before and I'd been in straw in the UK, but I really came away so impressed by that and by your presentation this morning that this really for low-rise buildings, I think should be pushed really hard because it looks terrific.
I'll pick something besides straw. So I was really sad when cellulose insulation disappeared from the market here, and I'd love to see cellulose insulation. So it's generally post-consumer recycled. It has some other stuff added for borate and such for fire retardants and insect control. But in high performance, low embodied carbon building, natural material buildings, cellulose insulation is really useful. And not having dense packed cellulose is a big detriment here. Yeah, it's quite a big swinger.
It's on its way out. It's nobody's reading newspapers anymore. You can't get enough cellulose in the States. They're switching all to wood fiber because there's.
I'd be happy to take that instead. Wood fiber's fun.
Yeah.
I'd be happy with wood fiber in place of cellulose. It's cellulose to me.
Yeah, that's true.
A couple of hospitals that could probably produce.
I'll just repeat my previous answer and say all of them. I want all materials to be challenged to start doing better. Right? I don't think it's necessarily constructive to alienate certain materials. I want them all to be challenged to bring their best to the table.
Yeah, I think I'd echo that as well, Joe. You know, it's not pick winners, and recognize that, you know, straw is going to have its place for a while. Concrete's going to have its place for a while. We need to be realistic about how much kind of market shift there is going to be between these materials. But, you know, echoing the use less stuff mantra, I think if there was one technology that needed to be progressed, it would be, I don't know, I loosely call it carbon literacy, but just understanding that every decision you make has a carbon impact. And if we could weight that and understand that, then we'd get, like, the quick wins would become obvious. And, you know, what I would love to see is people not even, you know, people get hung up on the carbon coefficients and what's my A1 to A5 and my Bs, and actually how much stuff are you actually using in your building? If we want people to use less of it, they need to know how much stuff they're using now. And if every structural engineer operating in New Zealand today could reduce the amount of concrete on their buildings by like 2%, wow, that would be an incredible impact.
Thanks, Katie. Whatever happened to Insul Fluff? That was the cellulose insulation, wasn't it?
I'll tell you afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah, they weren't eligible for the government subsidy for one of those programs.
So we've talked quite a lot about design. What are some of the things, and obviously the potential impact gets lesser and less as you go through a project, but what are some of the things that a builder does have control over on site? What are some things that a builder could implement to reduce the embodied carbon of a building?
I was going to my previous statement that I mentioned about the A5 is that builders really have to start looking at, you know, how are their employees getting to the sites? So many of these houses that we're doing are out in the country, and really, I don't know if here in North America, every single tradesperson is coming up in their own F-150 pickup, and driving it 3 hours to get a box of nails. I mean, the amount that a builder can, just by careful thought about how are we getting to the site? Can we carpool? Can we actually plan more carefully about the materials we need? I think this is the amount of waste there is grossly underestimated, and that every builder could easily fix.
I was going to say that builders, I mean, this is again maybe more in the design team, but builders need to be made aware of the different metrics. So this embodied carbon needs to be one of those design metrics that they're accountable for, right? So, you know, materials get swapped out for different reasons, but if the only metric for insulation being a good one, if the only thing you're accountable for is an R value, they're going to swap, you know, cellulose out for fiberglass because they might not even be aware that there are other things being considered for those selection criteria.
I was just going to elaborate on that efficiency point. I've actually worked with a builder recently who has a trailer that's got every nail and bolt and fixing that he is anticipating he's going to use. So he's not nipping to placemakers every 4 times a day to go and grab something, you know, so he's really thinking about those things. And I was super impressed by that. And it's a pretty simple thing to do. He's missing out on a lot of coffees, you know, but but he's making a big difference as well.
One other point I wanted to make about, there's a woman with a company, I forget the name of the company that she makes a panelized building system of Passive House. And she has these stickers that she puts all over the building to convince trades, you know, not to make holes in the building. Basically, they're stickers that say, you know, this house is a balloon, and if you puncture it, it will sink. And really educating the trades with a little humor and in-your-face sticker to teach them that they can ruin the whole thing just by putting a stupid hole in the membrane. And I don't know how much time people spend after the blower door test looking for those holes. But simple, clever training like this can make a big difference.
You failed to add that the balloon is hovering over a shark infested.
Yes, that's it. That's it. That's the right thing. A balloon over shark infested waters. Yes.
Just to echo Joe's point about you know, making builders accountable. I mean, it comes back to that carbon literacy and knowing how much quantities you've used. I mean, you know, waste, obviously construction sites, waste is a big thing. I guess it's visual, you can see it. You know, everything that gets chucked on a skip is something that has had emissions associated with it and therefore is you know, wasted. But, you know, I guess an opportunity for builders is to look at, well, does it have to be waste? So I'm not going to use this product now, but do I really have to chuck it in a bin? Is there some way that we can create a market for using salvageable materials? That would be really great to see, I think.
Awesome. Thanks, Katie. I was going to be really naughty and ask everybody how they would build their next house, but I've been told that I should cut it short now because we're trying to catch up on time. So you can ask them in the break. How would you? One each. Okay. Yes.
I'm not going to build a house. I'm going to use an existing one.
Nice.
I'm going to get an apartment because we have to stop building so many houses.
Well, I've been planning to build a straw bale house for about 10 years, but I'm still living in the same very small 70 square metre house with 4 of us, 2 dogs and a cat. So yeah, we're on the small scale and it seems to work. So maybe I'll stick with that.
Thanks to all our panel. Thanks, Katie, for dialing in and joining this